tuning in here and watching. This is just another conglomerate of what I did tonight. It's really not that big of an update, but I wanted to show you. The only change in the main code is right here, wplants with plants 3. So I went ahead and actually was working on this. What I wanted to do, and I'll show you really quickly here what it does, is first of all, it starts with a different theme for the platforms, and it actually happens to be the theme that was previously my favorite. So I went ahead and added it in to the code, and I'll show you that in a second. But I also I'm hitting the 2 key right now. Okay, so that's what happens when you hit the number 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit the number 1 key. And you can see the themes actually, you can control which theme is there based on which number key you hit, which is actually turned out to be really easy. This is pretty much it for the themes. I'm actually not going to run the other textured themes just yet. I wasn't actually that impressed with the way that any of them looked. However, I'm sure that I can get it to work really well in the future, just not right now, or possibly even tomorrow. But I wanted to keep my favorite theme as the initial theme, and then I thought the user can go through the world and then a trigger or something and the theme will change to this for them, so they'll discover this theme. But initially in the alpha release, you're going to be able to just change back and forth between this theme with the keys like this, because that's what I can do, so that's what you're going to be able to do. And then the number 1 key again gets back to this. So basically, in order to make this happen, everything kind of revolves around, where's it at? Let me get into the actual code here. Everything revolves around, I made a new function actually called change theme so that it would be easier to actually initialize themes and change between them. So everything revolves around that with this process input. See, right here is where we accept the theme change. So for instance, when the user hits the number 2, change the point mode to 2, and it runs the change theme with the parameter of number 2, very simply. Same thing with 1, point mode 1, change theme to 3, with the key number 3, everything. So everything's kind of in line with that. So what does that mean? So when you run the change theme, that's the new function, what this does is actually initializes each theme. So you notice that there's a parameter here called theme number. Okay, so that means everything inside here is going to be dependent upon this parameter. However, that does not have to be the case. So this first code will execute no matter which theme is selected. Okay, so it initializes these variables, and then it actually checks a Boolean variable, which is initially, all Booleans are initialized as false. So the fact that the game has been created starts out as false. And so I check for that. If not game created, so in other words, if that's false, then that becomes a true statement. So if not game created, right? So the first time the game is run, that's going to trigger true. And it will actually execute the code inside this statement. So that's when the boxes get created, just the top, bottom, left, and right. And then I kind of cleaned up the code so it's easier to see how the different 20s and 40s, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100, and it gets set based on their position in the world and the random. Anyways, so then also the left top, and you notice I left out some components here. The left top, the A component size type X and type Y. Okay, so that gets computed per box in the game, so the platforms. And then that happens all inside of that not game created code block. So then at the end of the code block, I set that Boolean to true. Excuse me, I set it to true, so then this code block is never again going to be entered into unless game created is once again set to false. Okay, so that takes care of that code that executes no matter what theme number. So then we get into the theme numbers like number 1. Okay, that's the one with all the random dots. So what I had to do in this case was pull some of the initialization for the platform colors. And because every time you change the theme, initially the first time is fine, but if you change to a different theme and then change back to one, it was not changing the color of the platforms to match the theme of the dots. So I actually had to choose a random color for the theme and then get the lines in here and then initialize the colors for the lines as well as the dots, recreation of the dots. Because I figured the dots are at random locations and running randomly anyways, so basically every time that this function is called with the parameter 1, the dots will just be completely randomized, which is not a big deal because nobody's sitting there tracking. That's not the visual illusion that the dots are creating anyway, so it doesn't relate to that. And their speed and directions all reset and everything's reset. So here's an interesting part too. What I was doing is I put in the theme number 2 initially, and you may have seen in the previous video. So I had the ability to just hit the number 2 and the dots would appear. The dots that expand and shrink. Okay, so then I went to put in theme number 3, which was, you remembered theme number 3 is this one, this was 2. And you notice they both use the position within the platforms to set the points. So the platform, like for each circle here, there is a group of little 4 squares there. But that doesn't relate at all to this theme because the dots are just random inside the platforms. So they have a lot in common, but they don't have it in common with theme number 1, so I can't really use any of the initialization code up here with these themes. So I said to come into this code block if it's either 2 or 3, because I literally copied this code into theme 3, and then the only lines that I changed was I changed this line right here. See? So for theme 2, this is executed, and for theme 3, this is executed. So also this gets executed, this little blip right here for theme 2. So this is really the only difference in the code, so I didn't want to completely rewrite it. So what I did was I deleted the option, I had it down there, and then I just brought it back up here, and I added the OR so that if it's 2 or 3, it starts to execute this code, and then everything's the same until this point right here. So as it's executing, if the theme was 2, it just does this, which sets the type for the fragment shader and then the value that goes in there. So that's the type X and type Y. And the same thing down here with the third theme, which is a random 5 or 6. This one's type 10, and then that's the value 0. So I'll show you the fragment shader again as well too, because I brought some of the code over from that. So the vertex shader is the same, no difference. The fragment shader, however, does have a few extra options in the switch statement. And those options, I literally copied the code and pasted it, and that's it. So here's case 5, okay, which covers, if you look at the vector that it's being times by and the quadrants that it's checking with, one of them goes clockwise, the other one goes counterclockwise, and it's a random decision which one is chosen, so it makes it seem like the whole thing is random in that regard. And also I had to change and use dim color instead of R color, because obviously dim color will still give us that great effect of the GUI on no matter which theme we've chosen. So the GUI is fading the pixels in that area still, no matter which theme we've chosen. So I think that pretty much sums it up. It's pretty it was pretty neat to do this, because actually you notice when I did the process input function, it's actually pretty easy. You just change the theme, call the number, and then point mode, set that equal, and then you've got it. And so what I was able to do in the input or init data, so I took out a lot of code and I just called this function with the number 3 and the point mode equals 3, because I literally copied the code verbatim from the init data function. So I figured, why not just, that's where I started. So this has been a very interesting little adventure tonight, and I thought I would share it with you because I really learned a lot going through this in this manner. So I hope everybody else learned a lot as well. I kind of breezed through this stuff really quickly, so I apologize for that, but I just wanted to cover everything in a fairly timely manner. This is about 10 minutes, so that's good. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave lots of comments in the section below the video, especially if you have questions.